Early rise leaves the ground means the beginning of a grand event, that new rice is on the table. Farmers have a strong desire for new rice, and it is not an exaggeration to say that they are like wolves and tigers. Think about it. After a summer and a fall harvest that lasted day and night, the farmers' bodies and bones were seriously depleted. How come are they iron? All of them are waiting to be fed. However, the new rice is brought to the table at such a juncture, and the farmers throw their arms and legs away, desperately trying to eat to death. No veggies, no salt, no soy sauce, just swallow. After swallowing, drink some water, wipe off the sweat, and do it again. The new rice has a unique fragrance, which, in the words of Blind Wang, is the smell of the sun combined with the smell of the wind. The sun has a smell, and the wind has a smile, and Blind Wang saw it, and it was in the new rice. People in a city will never know that. What they eat is always aged brown rice, which is red, not sticky at all, and chewed in the mouth like wood. The cooked rice of new rice is full of elasticity, one piece, oily and watery. Before the rice was boiled, a fragrance wafted out. Another advantage of new rice is that it does not swell the stomach. Flour is incomparable at this point. When a person is full, drinks some water and soaks in the stomach. It might cause death. New rice will not, so you can eat it to death. The most gratifying thing is not the new rice, but a porridge made of the new rice. New rice, how gritty and nourishing. Now you finally know why farmers marry in the 12th lunar month. There is knowledge here. In the 12th lunar month, after marrying the new person and locking the door, the groom pulls down her pants and sows the seeds to the bride. If you're lucky enough to catch up the sit-on joy, you will figure out if you count with your fingers. The babies are born just after the new rice is on the table, and the little mother convalesces just after the new rice is on the table. The so-called habits and customs of farmers are actually calculated by pinching their fingers. As long as there is new rice porridge, even if the new mother is empty, the baby can still live without milk. The mother-in-law boils a pot of new rice with a smile on her face and scrapes out the top layer of rice fat. Smells fragrant. It is milk. Then again, how can a mother who catches up with the new rice be empty breasts? After a few bowls of new rice porridge, the rice fat will be poured into the breasts. The woman's breasts become funnels, and the baby's tongue gently sips, and it comes down with clatters. New rice is good, and new rice porridge is even better. After the double seasons are over, farmers are free to do one thing: eat. After eating, straighten your stomach, stick your butt, and fart. Such farts are down to earth, proud, and at the same time have to be loud. Even girls can do it. When you're done, just add an explanation. Oops, I ate too much new rice. No one laughs at anyone. There are not many days when farmers can fart happily. Bad news fell from the sky. There was not even the slightest omen in advance. The great leader, the great commander, the great mentor, the great helmsman, the reddest red sun in the hearts of farmers, Chairman Mao, he is gone. People don't believe it. How is this possible? But the Central People's Broadcasting Station repeats the news over and over again. Sorrow sounded. On September the 9th, 1976, what a fine day, at 3:15 in the afternoon. Bad news came out of nowhere. Like 9.6 million square kilometers of land, one village fell into grief all of a sudden, and panic. What will happen? All the people put down their work and came to the door of the brigade. People gathered here, and no one spoke. No one dared to make a sound. No one knew who was the first to cry. Everyone cried. This is sincere grief. Although Chairman Mao, His Honor, had always lived in Tiananmen Square, he is in Wang Village every day, and his portrait is hung in everyone's home and nailed in everyone's heart. Everyone in Wang Village is familiar with his father's eyes, his double eyelid as wide as leeks, his wrinkled forehead, and the mole on his chin. When did he leave Wang Village? When did he leave farmers? No, never. He is the dearest person. Wu Manling stood at the door of the brigade, looking at everyone. With tears on her cheeks, she was a little lost, unable to say a word. At this time, someone in the crowd suddenly cried out. It was an old woman. She held a tree and said loudly, "The new rice has just come down. Why are you leaving at this time?" This sentence is heart-wrenching. Yes, the old lady said the vast majority of poor people farmers' heart. Wu Manling was moved by this sentence, and with an she leaned on the door frame. The cohesion of Wang Village is reflected in the moment of grief. Instead of mobilization at this time, it is grief that unites Wang Village. Grief is cohesive, and Wang Village suddenly formed a united front, indestructible. All the people were standing together, shoulder to shoulder. People were moving forward and moving closer to Wu Manling. Although they were slow, they had a turbulent momentum. The members of Wang Village showed noble consciousness, and everyone knew that at this time they should gather around and surround themselves with the branch secretary. When they really got close together, they found out that they did this not only because of unity, but because they were freed inside, and they became vigilant. They always feel that there will be an accident or a bigger one. Accidents are actually not terrible, but once an accident occurs, who will direct us? This is a realistic and urgent question. In the past, it was Chairman Mao, and when the chairman left, who would come? This question is terrifying, but the more afraid you are, the less you should wait and see, and the more you should take the initiative to do something. Vigorously. Go do something. Now that grief has turned into strength, what are you waiting for? Be sure to strike first and destroy something first. People are still pushing forward. All the forces are gathered together. The wind and the waves are calm, and the overall situation in the square is calm. However, it's tragic inside and full of daring spirit. Now, the only thing Wang Village lacks is direction, that is, orders. As long as there is an order, the mountains of swords, the sea of fire, all dare to go up and all dare to go down. Wu Manling was moved again. She slowly raised her arms, pressed them down, and said to everyone, "Everyone goes back first." She raised her head, glanced at the loudspeaker on the treetop, and said, "We need to listen to it." Everyone turned their heads and looked at the loudspeaker. The loudspeaker is now no longer a speaker, but an iron battle flag. Don't look at the loudspeaker hanging there all day long. It is not obvious. At such a serious moment, its absolute significance is reflected. Now it is superior. It is the underlying order, and it is the command of all actions. To protect the safety of the loudspeaker, Wu Manling provided an emergency plan, and a special action team led by Wu Manling was formally established that night. The so-called Special Action Team was actually composed of all the members of Wang Village. The 4 production teams were divided into 4 groups, and Wang Village immediately became a temporary and informal army. This army implements the contract system. Each production team protects one part of the ware and then subdivides this part into several small sections, each person a small piece. In this way, along the loudspeaker ware, it truly achieves every 3 or 5 steps per post. The barriers are strict. Wang Village has been completely militarized. As Chairman Mao, his elder, said, all the people are soldiers. Militarization is the safest and most powerful solution at any time. It is guaranteed. At present, Wu Manling is not only the secretary of Wang Village, but also the military commander of Wang Village. The loudspeaker delivered the high-level deployment. According to the deployment of the superiors, Wang Village set up a morning hall at the brigade headquarters. All the people in Wang Village mobilized, writing slogans, tying paper flowers, and making wreaths. The wreaths were placed round after round along the inner side of the brigade, with white flowers mixed with light gold foil and tin foil, as well as red, orange, yellow, green, aquamarine, blue, and purple. That is noisy and colorful. It brings out the atmosphere of the funeral, which is infinitely warm sadness. The sound of Beijing, as well as the mournful music, was repeated over the loudspeakers. The bright fall sun is melancholy and heavy. However, the discordant voice still appeared. Blind Wang, this 5 guaranteed household who didn't perform well during the earthquake, his rogue proletarian habits were exposed, and he surprisingly drank. He got a little wine from nowhere, and he was flushed and smelled of alcohol. This problem is serious, quite serious. The loudspeaker has long issued a notice that a memorial service for the great leader Chairman Mao will be held in Tiananmen Square on September the 15th. During this period, no entertainment activities are allowed on any piece of land in China. What kind of thing are you, Blind Wang? You eat 6 meals in 3 days. What are you happy with? How can you drink at such a moment? He was immediately discovered by Wang Village, reported, tied up, and taken to the brigade. As early as the earthquake time, Wu Manling planned to tighten Blind Wang's bones. Out of the overall situation, Wu Manling let him go and was generous to him. But Blind Wang just didn't realize this. His blind eyes could never see one thing, and that was leniency. This time, Wu Manling didn't argue with him and directly asked someone to bring a rope and tighten the bones for him. Blind Wang was tightly bound, covered with hemp ropes. Only a head was left, and he could not even see his 2 feet. Tightened, Blind Wang was thrown under the rostrum of the brigade headquarters. Wu Manling said, "Except for interrogation, you're not allowed to come out for 15 days. Above the rostrum is the portrait of Chairman Mao. Of course, Blind Wang knows what it means to detain him in this place. He is frightened, and his aggression is gone." After 33 people and 11 rounds of rigorous review, it was concluded that Blind Wang's drinking was not an organized action, not a premeditated act, but a sudden personal behavior of Blind Wang. After all, he's greedy. This is very disappointing. At such a moment, the people of Wang Village actually long for a battle, for a real contest, for a time of dying or living. The problem is, this is premised on an enemy. How much one village longed to be able to dig out a lot of enemies at once, like digging potatoes and peanuts, through the breakthrough of blind one, discovering a group, fighting a group, and then knocking down another group. Unfortunately, it was not found. The searching and digging of old Haporn stopped at the moment when the bad news came. He tilted his head, held the handle of the big shovel, and listened carefully. After hearing, old Haporn put down the big shovel in his hand, lit a cigarette pot by himself, and squatted down steadily. That night, old Haporn did not toss, but lay in bed quietly all night, which was rare. Instead, Xinglong became alert and did not dare to sleep. He felt that something would happen to old Haporn, and he had been waiting all night. But old Haporn didn't make any noise until dawn. Xinglong heard the chirping of sparrows and the crowing of roosters, closed his eyes, and fell asleep. When he woke up, it was almost noon. Xinglong came to the yard, and old Haporn was already sweating. He was not digging, on the contrary, filling. He filled hole after hole with fresh soil from the patio. The grief music was still ringing, but Xinglong's heart secretly rejoiced. This is a good sign, as his father is sick for no reason and is now recovering for no reason. It is possible. No matter what secrets are hidden in his heart, at least his behavior is normal, and there is a side that is developing in a good direction. Xinglong picked up a large spade and began to help his father. As long as the yard can be filled in, everything will be fine. The new soil in the yard was piled up there, and it was a stormy sea. Xinglong said, "No more digging?" Old Haporn said, "No more digging." Xinglong said, "No more finding?" Old Haporn said, "No more finding." Xinglong said, "This is good. How clean." Old Haporn said, "That's good. It's clean." After filling the hole in the patio, old Haporn took out a stool and sat down. Under the accompaniment of the grief music, old Haporn raised his head and began to look at the sky. He suddenly became interested in and fascinated by the sky. It was a strong infatuation, and he had a desire to study and explore. He just stared at it, stared for a long time, stared and looked carefully. His eyes narrowed, his mouth opened wide, and even saliva flowed out. He was so single-minded, facing the sky, looking, and thinking. Because his brows were already furrowed, the sky is empty. What is he looking at? What is he thinking? No one knows. Old Haporn has no beginning, no end, no questions, and no answers. He just stared blankly. By the way, the sky is actually not empty. There is one thing, and that is the sun. But the sun cannot be seen. The sun is never meant to be seen. However, old Haporn was stubborn and wanted to watch. He stared at the sun, but for a moment his eyes were black, smeared like a blind man. The sky was as black as a bottomless hole. In the end, old Haporn still looked away and moved to his 3 large tiled houses. The large, tile-roofed houses were also black, like a cluster of ink. Slowly, it became clear, with a domineering and splendid silhouette. It stood majestically, emitting a bluish-gray light. This time, old Haporn has seen it clearly. His big tiled house is under the sky. The sky, the big tiled house. What could be more beautiful than this? No more. Old Haporn looked at the corrugations, and his eyes followed the corrugations one by one as if he was combing a woman's hair when he was young. The corrugations are bumpy and neat, like a bride's hair, slippery, and keep the teeth marks of the comb. Yes, the teeth marks of the comb. Xinlong's mother was like this when she married here, water light on her head, and the teeth marks of comb alluring. Old Haporn still remembers the night of the wedding. He looked at his bride and pushed her down with just a blink. Old Haporn pulled off her cotton pants and didn't even take off her top. He shoved his thing inside. Old Haporn was in a panic. He must know that the bride under his body was not an ordinary woman. She was slapped by Wang Erhu and almost became Wang Erhu's little one. But Wang Erhu's life was short, so he didn't have time. The bride who was slapped by Wang Erhu gave Old Haporn infinite joy. This is what he likes, and this is what he is fascinated by. What he wants to sleep most is slapped by Wang Erhu. He must find out what woman whom Wang Erhu has slept with, and he wants to taste her. In detail, since the day he worked for Wang Erhu, Old Haporn has set a grand goal in life. He wants to be Wang Erhu. It's a distant dream. He longed to exhale and breathe like Wang Erhu. He longed to walk and talk like Wang Erhu, and he longed to eat and sleep like Wang Erhu. No one would have imagined that as soon as the land reform arrived, Wang Erhu, who was alive and well, would be reformed into a headless corpse, and his 3 large tile-roofed houses were reformed into his. It was too simple, too miraculous, and he dared not to believe. It is true. Now Old Haporn is going to sleep with the woman that Wang Erhu slept with. What is Old Haporn if he's not Wang Erhu? Who is Old Haporn if he's not Wang Erhu? God has eyes. On the wedding night, Old Haporn did not sleep for the whole night. He was fucking the woman Wang Erhu had slept with over and over again. When tired, take a breath, and then fuck again. When thirsty, drink some water and fuck again. How tasteful, how hearty, how turning over, and how liberal. The sky in the liberated area is bright, and the bridegroom in the liberated area loves it. He wants to fuck every day, fuck every month, and fuck every year. Old Haporn was hard, rubbing quickly between the bride's thighs and going in and out. He panted and asked his bride, "He's better, or am I?" The bride gritted her teeth and didn't say anything, then hit her. Old Haporn freed his hand and slapped the bride 7 or 8 times in a row. The bride was afraid of being beaten and whispered, "Man, he can't do it. You are better." When Old Haporn heard this, his body straightened. Quite right there, he can't go on but shooting. He shouted out loud and shot hard, leaving no drop. Old Haporn shot the last bullet on the wedding night, and when it was over, it was dawn. The east was red, the sun was rising, and Old Haporn cried. He thumbed the bedboard softly and said extremely aggrievedly to the bride's 2 tits, "Damn it! I don't have any virtues. How can an Old Haporn have today?" Old Haporn looked at his big tile house and suddenly found an accident. A lot of tile plants grew in the middle of the corrugations. When did these tile plants grow? Old Haporn thought, "Can't remember. It must have been a long time. It's not a matter of 3 years or 5 years, because he didn't pay attention to it. These gray tile plants are particularly sturdy. If the entire roof is regarded as a hillside, they are full of mountains and plains. Old Haporn remembered that when he just moved in, The 3 large tile houses were still new. He had seen every brick and tile, and there were no plants in the corrugated box. How come there are plants now? There shouldn't be. Old Haporn decided to pick them up. Old Haporn called Xinglong and asked him to bring a letter. Xinglong was puzzled and asked, "What are you going to do?" Old Haporn turned around, his eyes sharpened, revealing an aggressive force. Old Haporn said, "If you're asked to move, you will move." This kind of look Xinglong is all too familiar. This is the father's gaze. This is Old Haporn's gaze. This is his father. This is Old Haporn. Domineering, decisive, always reasonable, always right. His father is finally back. Xinglong was overjoyed, brought a letter, and climbed to the roof with his father. They began to clear the tile plants between the corrugated boxes. Old Haporn told Xinglong again and again, "Keep your hands light, your feet light, and your movements light. Never break the tiles, not a single piece." After about half a day, the hard-working father and son finally cleaned the tile plants on the big tile house. Old Haporn got down from the roof, lit a cigarette, and once again looked at his large tile-roofed house. Excluding the tile plants, the large tile house is more like a large tiled house, like new, with every brick and tile showing their original appearance, which is extraordinarily beautiful. It's fascinating. Old Haporn sat down and he asked Xinglong to bring him water. Old Haporn was smoking and drinking, listening to the grief music and looking at the house. It's the appearance of contentment, the appearance of joy in his heart. It's a worried look, full of suspicion. At the same time, he still looks down to earth and looks like 99 to 1. Hard to say. When it was over, Old Haporn drank the water, put the smoke pot on the bench, tidied up his clothes and pants, and went to the roof again. After going to the roof, Old Haporn also dragged the ladder up. He climbed to the highest point on the ridge, stood up, opened his eyes. One village is then in his eyes. He looked at one village again, one roof after another. The difference is that they're thatched roofs, ugly and low. Old Haporn was condescending. It's good to be condescending. It's really good. Great. Old Haporn took a step back, facing the north, and knelt down. He took 3 incense sticks out of his pocket like a conjuration, lit them, and stuck them in the cracks of the tiles. Old Haporn kowtowed 3 times. It was a special move, and he slammed his head too hard, making a metallic sound between his forehead and the tiles. A gust of wind blew the sound of the grief music, and it was violent grief. Xinglong shouted on the patio, "Dad, what are you doing? Come down." In fact, Xinglong already had a very bad premonition, but he had no choice but to go around in circles on the patio. Xinglong watched Old Haporn kowtow, stretch out his hand, and stroke the tiles, stroking them over and over again with a very cherished look. After touching them, Old Haporn stood up on the roof and walked west along the ridge, all the way to the end. Xinglong saw his father's belly stretched out and shouted loudly, "Cleaned, cleaned, cleaned." These are the last 3 sentences of Old Haporn's life. Just 9 words. Xinglong did not hear, but Xinglong saw all kinds of disasters from his father's violent shaking. Before Xinglong could speak, he found that his father was upright, with his head down, and he fell down. Old Happorn had no funeral and was buried quite sloppy. His body was wrapped in a straw mat and done quickly. It can't blame others. He died at an untimely time. This person is really ignorant. How can he die at this time? What are you anxious about? Can't you just die after a few days? How can't people die on any day? His funeral can only be like this. It's the best. Therefore, when a person dies, it's very important. It is more important than when a person is born. Being born is not an ability, but dying is. Wu Manling got the death information of old Happorn and specially called Xinglong to the brigade. Wu Manling informed that because of the special circumstances, she hoped that the funeral of old Happorn could be handled with ease, and that Xinglong could take into account the overall situation. Xinglong nodded. In fact, Xinglong doesn't need Secretary Wu to tell him this. At such a juncture, how could Xinglong have the funeral for his father? Impossible. Xinglong's mother was always beside old Happorn when he was about to cremate him. She looked at old Happorn and kept stroking his head. But Xinglong's mother suddenly jumped up. Every jump was with a clap. While clapping, she shouted, "That's right! That's good! That's awesome!" As the center of one village, the importance of the brigade has really been shown in the past few days. As long as they are free, people will come here consciously and stand silently for an hour or two, especially at night. The pedestrians flocked to the alleys leading to the brigade headquarters. The oil lamp illuminated the morning hall as bright as day. The oil lamp is a special thing, and it is only used when something very important happens. Therefore, it is not just a lamp, but a sign of a serious situation, a sign of a grave state. The gas oil lamp burns the most common kerosene. However, there is a very hot airbag, and when it is filled with gas, it works a bit like a welding torch. Its light bulb is not glass, but a small gauze bag. When the air pressure pushes the kerosene to spray outward, the small gauze bag burns. There is no open flame, but it can emit a dazzling light. The door of the brigade was open, and the light of the gas oil lamp rushed out of the door like a knife, splitting the night in two. On the left is night, on the right is still night. Dazzling lights make the night darker. The sky is darker, the ground is darker, and people's faces are darker. Dark black. A person is a black hole. On the afternoon of September 15th, the memorial service for the great leader Chairman Mao was held in Tiananmen Square. In fact, the venue for the memorial service is not just Tiananmen Square, but China. It is the northeast, southwest, northwest, and southeast. The Yangtze River and the Great Wall, the Yellow Mountain and the Yellow River. And it is 9.6 million square kilometers of land. The sky is crying, the earth is weeping, the mountains and rivers are moved, and the heaven and the earth are discolored. 56 ethnic groups bow their heads. This is the saddest day for the Chinese nation. Chairman Mao, he has made immeasurable contributions to the Chinese people and the people of the world. His living is an inestimable loss to the Chinese people and the people of the world. Inestimable. Inestimable by no one. There is no such measure in the world. The sky is sunny, but it is raining in everyone's heart. Tears were pouring down. The people of one village gathered at the gate of the brigade headquarters, lined up neatly according to the 4 production teams. and bowed in silence according to the instructions on the loudspeaker. The loudspeaker brought the voice of Beijing. At this moment, Wang Village is the same as Beijing. People have never felt that they are so close to Beijing. On the other hand, people have never felt that Beijing is so omnipresent. Beijing is Mercury with its omnipotent penetration ability. This feeling is so strong, majestic, and magnificent. This feeling cheered up the people of Wang Village suddenly, and their hearts were full of courage and fearlessness. They were not in Wang Village, they were in Beijing like the people of the whole country. To ensure the purity of the meeting, Wu Manling asked the Peiquan to do a comprehensive cleaning of the venue before the memorial service began. This is the people's tribute to their leader, and some people are not allowed to participate. Wu Manling made a big list. Bao Wang, Wang Shiguo, Woman Kong, Kong Suzhen. The land is uneven, Shen Fu. The face is not flat, Lu Hongying. Cricket, Yang Guanglan. Sprayer, Yu Guoxiang. As well as 14 people, including Mr. Gu and Wang Dagui, were excluded from the meeting. Wu Manling said that although they were eliminated, they were not allowed to go home, and they had to be under the eyes of the people. Otherwise, they would talk nonsense and move around. Where to put them is hard to do. Fortunately, Peiquan came up with a good method. He found a cement boat, drove them all to the boat, and then rowed the cement boat to the gate of the brigade. Right in the middle of the water, the anchor was dropped, and the cement boat stopped there. That's it. The memorial service was on the shore while they were on the water. On the one hand, they are there. On the other, they are not. Best of both worlds. 14 people crowded the cement boat, and they should stand at attention or at bold. Tears were shed, and everything was neatly unified, and at the same time in an orderly manner. In fact, it's complicated. Just saying Mr. Gu, who is extremely dissatisfied with the arrangement this time. He's angry, but dares not to speak out. How could he be with these people to mourn Chairman Mao? It was a grand occasion, and he couldn't be with these people. But where could he go if not be together? Mr. Gu could only cry. He cried as hard as he could, and after crying, it was a bit lingering. Mr. Gu's grief was lonely, and Mr. Gu's tears were even more lonely. It was difficult for people in Wang Village to understand this. For others, Chairman Mao just helped them turn over and liberate. However, Chairman Mao's kindness to Mr. Gu is not only that, but also to help him be reborn and change his bones. Mr. Gu is spiritual and ideological. It was Chairman Mao who elevated this dual remnant of feudalism and bourgeoisie into a staunch and thorough materialist. Mr. Gu fell in love with revolution, fell in love with insurrection, and fell in love with overthrowing, beating up, raiding, handing out, and punishing. There is a different type of happiness here, another kind of joy. There is a spiritual liberation here. How can these people understand? What did these people in Wang Village know? He felt it. Chairman Mao is kind to him, and he owes a debt to the old man. Mr. Gu had nothing else but to silently express his gratitude at the scene of the memorial service. However, it is not possible. Mr. Gu was not only sad, but also wronged. Through tearful eyes, Mr. Gu looked at the venue from a distance. He wrote the banners of the venue in bold and cut them out carefully with scissors. Each of them is as big as a wood table and took him a whole night. The words on the banner can be read by Mr. Gu. Sadly mourn for the great leader, Chairman Mao. Every word is clear. However, after all, there is half a river in the middle, which is not the case. Mr. Gu was sad, even sadder than when he was declared a rightist. Although tears are shameful, today Mr. Gu couldn't help them. The melody of the Internationale finally came from the speaker. Mr. Gu's favorite is the Internationale. It is a trombone, full of passion for sacrifice, sympathetic, solemn, somber, and majestic, as if calling on people to die together. In fact, Mr. Gu wanted to die as soon as he heard the Internationale. As soon as the melody of the Internationale sounded, Mr. Gu's blood boiled. He burst into tears when he came to the bow of the boat, as if no one was around. He sang loudly in Russian. On that night, Kong Su-zhen found Wang Shiguo, and she wanted to do Buddhist deeds. She wanted to transcend for Chairman Mao. She wanted to recite the Diamond Sutra for Chairman Mao. Wang Shiguo responded. After midnight, he called Shen Fu'e, Lu Hongying, Yang Guanglan, and Yu Guoxiang together. They boarded a boat and rowed out of the waterway for 4 or 5 miles. On the boat, they set up a water dojo. After all, it was the water of the fall night, with a solid, thick black flowing silently. They didn't have wooden fish or chimes, but they were creative, and most importantly, they had a pious heart. They knocked on the boat. Dong, 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 dong. The sound spread quite far, but it was all right, safe. They knelt in the cabin, facing the Big Dipper in the sky, kowtowed, burnt paper, and lighted incense. They wanted to make money for Chairman Mao, as they couldn't let the chairman suffer over there. Chairman Mao will definitely be able to receive this kind of heart from them. As long as it transfers to Beijing, he will receive it. They are chanting. They believe that in the sound of their prayers, Chairman Mao is walking barefoot and stepping on lotus flowers to the paradise of Elysium. 20 years later, the old man will definitely come back, return to China, return to Beijing, return to Wang village, and lead the people to live the life of the goddess scattering flowers. When they thought of this, they were sad, but it was the kind of sadness full of hope. One by one, they cried out in pain. Early in the morning of the next day, Quack Zu reported the latest development to Wu Manling. But Wu Manling did not speak. Of course, it is wrong to engage in feudal superstition. However, this time there is no problem with its theme, and in the general direction it is still correct. Wu Manling was in trouble. Leaders had better don't know some things. If you know, should you handle it or not? Once knowing it, the leader will be in a dilemma. For the first time, Wu Manling pulled Quack Zu down and lost her temper. She impatiently complained to Quack Zu. Don't report on everything.